that you've been to some far out places. It's hard to carry on when you feel all alone. Now I've swung back down again. It's worse than it was before. If I hadn't seen such...
And it's Thierry Henry. And Henry is magnificent. It's absolutely magnificent. And when you need a goal, you need Thierry Henry.
Something changed pace through the centre. It's Bergkamp. That's magnificent.
So, good evening, everyone. I'm doing this one because I've had so many people ask me to do this history of Herbert Chapman. It's not just about Herbert Chapman at Arsenal, because I'm going to cover that later in the history channel bit I'm doing of his amazing success at Arsenal Football Club. This is about Herbert Chapman himself, what he achieved in his career. So we'll get into it. So Herbert Chapman was born on the 19th of January 1878, and he became a football player, but he had a pretty undistinguished playing career. But he did go on to become one of the most influential, successful managers of the early 20th century. Now, unfortunately, he died quite young, and he never got to see the full success that he had brought to Arsenal before he died in 1934. And he's regarded as one of the greatest innovators of football at the time. But as a player, Chapman played for a variety of clubs at Football League and non-league levels, but his record was generally unremarkable. As a player, he made fewer than 40 league appearances over the course of a decade and did not win any major honours. Instead, he found success as a manager. Now, when you think a player of his not great ability went on to become one of the greatest managers at the early part of the 20th century, it's quite remarkable. He started in 1896 his playing career at Kiverton Park. He played for Ashley North End, Stalybridge Rovers, who went on to become Stalybridge Celtic, Rochdale. Never played a game between 1896 and 1898. So it doesn't really show much potential. He then went to Grimsby Town and actually played 10 games or 10 appearances and scored 4 goals. But the best period of his career was, and a little known fact, was at Northampton Town between 1901 and 1902, when he played 22 times, scoring 14 goals. Now, he then went to Sheffield United, one of the big Midland clubs at the time, along with the Wednesday, who then became Sheffield Wednesday. Now, Sheffield United, he played 21 games, scoring 2 goals. He then went to Northampton Town, and we'll come back to that later. And then he went to Tottenham Hotspur, played 42 times, scoring 16 goals. Then he went back to Northampton Town. So his career as a footballer wasn't all that, but notably, the interesting point is that when he left Tottenham, he went back to manage Northampton Town, Leeds City, who won, we'll come on to it, but they disappeared. but his first major success was at Huddersfield Town, and then, of course, his iconic time at Arsenal. So in 1907, he's about to leave Tottenham, and Chapman had recommended Spurs teammate Walter Ball, his old club, Northampton Town, as their new manager. However, Ball changed his mind and in turn recommended that Chapman take the job instead. Chapman changed his mind about retiring from the game and became player manager of Northampton Town. Northampton finished bottom of the Southern League 2 seasons running immediately before Chapman's appointment, but Chapman turned the club around within a very short period of time. So it quite clearly showed that he had some ability as a manager. So at this time, teams were rarely employing tactics of any sort or any description. And Chapman would remark that, in his view, no attempt was made to organise victory. The most that I could remember was the occasional chat between two players on the wing. So not all that was it. As a manager, he sought to change that, and after seeing Northampton lose to Norwich City, who at the time were a club that were building quite successfully, and despite dominating, Chapman opined a team can attack too much. Interesting comment. So he thus set about creating a tactical framework for his players. He dropped the halfbacks, midfield, if you want to call it nowadays, back to give his forwards more space and draw the opposition defenders out of their penalty box. Because back then, defenders very rarely came out of the penalty box. So he wanted to adopt this method where the midfield could drag the defenders out, and so that the now new midfield could get behind them, and that we will see more of in a bit. So while encouraging his own back line to pass their way out of trouble, gradually he created a style of attacking football, or counter-attacking football, I think is a better way of describing it, which is at odds with the prevailing orthodoxy that was prominent at the time, but nevertheless highly effective. Swindon Town's England international Harold Fleming, after losing 4-1 at home to Northampton, remarked to Chapman, "You have something more than a team, you have a machine." So to allow a system to reach its full potential, Chapman encouraged his chairman to spend money on new players. The club's first ever transfer fee of £400, was paid for Welsh international Lloyd Davis, who remains Northampton Town most capped player to date. So with his new talent in his first season in charge, Chapman led Northampton to 8th place, with additional new signings such as inside forward Albert Lewis from Coventry City, another team at the time, Midlands team, who were progressing, because we have to remember that still in the south of the country, there was not many top teams. It was predominantly Midlands and the northwest and northeast of the country. Because football at this point, even at this time, was still looked upon as being the working class man's game. And the influence still, as I've discussed before, was very much that football was an amateur, or should be an amateur sport. And this was very, very heavily influenced by the two biggest universities at the time, Cambridge and Oxford. So when he got this player from Coventry City, he used this as a springboard to take the Southern League title in 1908-09, with Lewis finishing as the top scorer. So you can quite clearly see that Chapman was trying to build a methodology to what he could build a club around. So by now, Chapman had retired as a player, which is probably a good thing. He wasn't a great player. Having played his last game against Watford in January 1909. But filled the gap he left, as well as showing his eye for spotting talent. So by signing players such as a future England international, great name is, Fanny Walden, for a footballer, Fanny Walden. As Southern League champions, Northampton contested the 1909 FA Cup, Charity Shield, and lost 2-0 to Newcastle United, which for a team of this stature was quite something, because Newcastle United were a very big and established club now. So that was quite something. They finished in the top 4, but it was a difficult time all round at the club at Northampton time. There was a lot of unrest. They weren't financially a rich club, and things were not going particularly well behind the scenes. Additionally, they proved their mettle in the FA Cup against first division sides, and they played against the Wednesday and knocked them out of the FA Cup, which was a major, and taking Nottingham Forest and Newcastle United to replays where they lost both of those 1-0. So Chapman was keen to get Northampton Town into the Football League, but no automatic promotion or relegation at this time rules proved that to be very difficult. So Chapman proposed a new 2-tier division under the Football League. It wasn't taken up. It was rejected by the FA, but he wanted to propose an automatic promotion and relegation system, but this was not taken up. It wasn't until a similar proposal of this design was actually brought in 1921 by the FA, when it went to the current setup of a 4-division league, but basically was set up by the FA, even though a lot of accreditation is given to Herbert Chapman for his proposal. So you can see he had a lot of innovative ideas, but the FA at the time, being the FA, it was a very closed shop setup. So, you know, you're basically bashing your head against a brick wall. So in the 1912 closed season, he was offered the chance to manage second division team of the National League, Leeds City. And with Northampton's blessing, he moved back again up to North and joined the league side. So he now is at Leeds City. Leeds City had finished 19th in the second division, and in the season preceding Chapman's arrival, and were facing re-election, because then back in those days, if you finished bottom, you had to apply for re-election. Chapman played an essential part in lobbying for the side's readmission, and Leeds City were duly re-elected. That done, Chapman signed new talent such as a Jimmy Spears from Bradford City, and despite some erratic performances, losing 6-0 in between 2 5-1 wins, for example, City finished 6th in 1912-13. Chapman's first season attendances rose at Ellen Road from 8.5 to 13 odd thousand fans in his first year, as Chapman's attacking side scored 70 goals, the second highest total in the entire division. So you can see he's starting to bring something into football with his new direction. With the strengthening of the defence, City's form improved further the next season in 1913-14, coming fourth, 2 points outside of the promotion places. Despite having failed in his promise to get the team promoted within 2 years, City's rise in attendances and their resulting better profits kept the directors happy. But the problem was the club were confident of promotion in 1914-15. However, sadly, the declaration of World War I disrupted Leeds City's season, with attendances down as men signed up to go to the front. And Chapman by now had amassed a very large squad and was unable to pick a consistent side, continually changing his first team lineup. So Leeds City lost 6 of their last 8 games of that season to finish just 15th. So it all went rather tits up, to be honest. League football obviously was suspended during World War I and for the rest of the war. So with Leeds City playing in regional competitions, having lost a lot of players to having signed up to go to fight in France and Belgium, it left Leeds with a very, very weakened team. Leeds relied heavily on guest players at this point in time, and during his matches, Chapman had decided to help the war effort himself, taking up a position as a manager of a munitions factory in Barnbow near Crossgates in 1916. So this is up in Leeds, obviously. For the next 2 years, City's assistant manager, George Cripps, stood in for Chapman on the administrative side of things. And while Chairman Joe Connor of Leeds City and another director took charge of the team. So things aren't looking great at the moment now for Leeds City. Chapman returned to Leeds City from Barnbow after hostilities had ended, but resigned from Leeds City suddenly in December 1918, eventually moving to Selby to take up a position as a superintendent at coke and oil works. No reason was given, no idea. I think other things I have read is that he was not happy with the way the club was going to go, so he decided it was time to move. Now, unfortunately, as football resumed in 1919-20 to its pre-war level, Leeds City were accused by a former player of financial irregularities involving illegal payments to guest players during wartime matches. Now, apparently, there were strict regulations that during this time, because of the fact that war was on, there shouldn't be any payments to non-professional players. No documentary evidence was produced, but Leeds' refusal to allow the authority to assess their financial records was deemed a sign of guilt, and they were basically expelled from the Football League in October 1919. And 5 club officials, including Chapman, were banned from football for life. I mean, for life, you know. I mean, the club was dissolved and the players auctioned off, and their Ellen Road ground was taken over by the newly formed Leeds United. So for basically Chapman, that's basically saying his career's over. But he appealed and was allowed to come back into football, and he went on to manage a very, very successful, at the time, in Northern England, Huddersfield Town. So he went on to join Huddersfield Town and had amazing success. He was still working as this at this coat works in Selby, and when his ban was imposed, the company that he was working for was dissolved in 1920, and he was approached by Huddersfield Town. Huddersfield Town approached him, so that quite clearly says that they see something in this guy. And he was asked to become assistant to Ambrose Langley, who had been a former teammate of Herbert Chapman's brother Harry at the Wednesday. The Wednesday that obviously went on to become later Sheffield Wednesday. Huddersfield Town backed Chapman in an appeal against the ban that he had received by the FA, and he basically had not been in charge of Leeds City at the time of these supposed irregularities in financial doings. So he basically was allowed to come back and was appointed to assistant at Huddersfield Town. Chapman was promoted to full secretary manager. I've never heard of that term, but I guess to me it just means assistant manager, replacing Langley the following month, and soon became the manager there. And he had the belief that Huddersfield Town should reorganise completely how the team, the whole structure of the team should be. And so he joined Huddersfield Town, becomes manager. Chapman's full first season in charge, 1921-22. Won the FA Cup, beating Preston North End, who, let's get it, Preston North End were at this point in time probably the biggest club in Northern England. I mean, they've been invincibles back in their time, and the final that year was actually played at Stamford Bridge. So the first club's major trophy in the league. However, his side has spent most of the season fighting relegation and finished 14th. So Chapman looked to strengthen his squad. As at Northampton, Chapman's tactics were based upon the principle of a strong defence and a fast counter-attacking response. Now, he went on with various applications of this method that he was trying to implement, called the WM method, and we'll come to that in a little bit. So Chapman is now being granted control of all footballing affairs at the club, and made his responsibility to work to his advantage, encouraging the team's reserve and third teams to play the same style of football as the first team, so that they're basically, what he's trying to do is not have any confliction in how people are playing, which, let's be fair, it's a pretty sensible thing to do, to be honest. Anyway, so we have a look at a few comments. So we got Delboy, nice to see you, mate. Warren, nice one, mate. Great show earlier. It's worth watching, mate, honestly. So I did see someone here. Oh, Connor, CMO, anybody, if you ever need any graphic work, go and see that young man. It was him that did my starting thing and the other banners and all that. He's a top guy, honestly, top fella. Who else we've got? Diego, nice to see you, man. Great to see you here. And Drew Gunners. I'll watch what I've missed on catch up. No worries, mate. It is what it is. Ian Gould, nice to see you, mate. So, getting back to it. So, with new players using Chapman's system, Huddersfield were transformed. They finished third in the 1922-23 season and went on to win their first league title in 23-24. Success was by the narrowest of margins, equal in points with Cardiff City. Now, Cardiff City back then were a proper decent big club. You know, I mean, we'll see that when Herbert Chapman joins Arsenal. Huddersfield won by a difference of, I don't get this, how they used to work this out, but of 0.024 in goal average. Don't understand how they did that. The final goal by Brown in a 3-0 win over Nottingham Forest on the final day of the season proved crucial, although ultimately it was Huddersfield's superior defence record which gave them the advantage. I honestly don't know what any of that's about, because I don't know how they work that out. I don't know. Following their title win, Chapman kept faith in his squad, making only one new signing, outside right Joey Williams. So Huddersfield started brightly, but a poor run of form in October in the next season, in 24-25, saw them replacing various players. Herbert Chapman was very much the player, and we'll come to see it quite quickly. He could get quite pissed off with players, and if he didn't like what they were doing, that's it, you're out the door. So you could say similarity to our manager today. But so Taylor was replaced by a new signing, Billy Mercer. Now, this fella had a resurgence in form and did amazing stuff at Huddersfield, and saw Huddersfield climb the table, regaining top spot with a 5-0 win over Arsenal in February, and eventually finishing 2 points clear of runners-up West Bromwich Albion. So we can quite clearly see now at this point in history of the Football League, names we still have today are starting to come about. So as a testament to Chapman's philosophy of relying on a strong defence, it was the time of a title-winning side had gone through a season without conceding more than 2 goals in any match. That's, you know, you've got to think that's quite something. So Herbert Chapman now is asked by Arsenal to join Arsenal as their manager, and he isn't convinced, but eventually he does join. And in the 1925 close season, Chapman had already set about improving his squad for Huddersfield to seek a 3rd successive title, something which had never been achieved before. So at the same time, Arsenal were looking to replace the manager Leslie Knighton, who had been sacked. Arsenal at the time was chairman, so Henry Norris, you may have heard of him, quite infamous in the Arsenal history, and I will be covering all of this in much more detail about Arsenal with these people. So Arsenal Football Club is open to receive applications for the position of team manager. They actually posted this in newspapers. Can you believe that? So, and it says, he must be experienced and possess the highest qualifications for the post, both as to ability and personal character. Gentlemen who sole ability to build up a good side depends on the payment of heavy and exorbitant transfer fees need not apply. Quite interesting. Although Arsenal have been fighting relegation in the 2 previous seasons, and despite the chairman's restriction on spending, excuse me, Chapman nevertheless moved to Arsenal soon afterwards and attracted both by the London club's larger crowds. I mean, Arsenal now are at Highbury, and they have spent fortunes in developing Highbury to the biggest crowd capacity ground in the south of England. And so Herbert Chapman is offered the job on an annual salary of £2,000 a year, double which he actually earned at Huddersfield Town. Now, you could say that Huddersfield Town at this point were a bigger club than Arsenal, maybe not so much in their crowd capacity, but certainly in their success, and that was the case in point. So Herbert Chapman goes now to Arsenal, and is basically walking in with a philosophy that he has developed at Northampton Town and Huddersfield, and tried to at Leeds City. So at Arsenal, Chapman immediately makes an impact by signing up a 34-year-old Charlie Buchan, an England international and Sunderland's all-time record goal scorer, which he made Arsenal's captain. So Chapman now really wants to enforce his WM formation. Basically, he believed that allowing his defenders, and you could say, was he the manager really that developed the 2 left and right backs, centre midfielder, 2 holding midfielders, and then 2 attacking midfielders. And so basically he's doing this shape. And basically that is still pretty much predominantly played in modern football, if you think about it. You can mix it up with 4-4-3, blah, 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 and this, that, and the other. That is pretty much the philosophy that Herbert Chapman invented. So Chapman came to Arsenal, promising to make them the Newcastle of the South. That just shows how big a team Newcastle were regarded at the time. So Chapman and Buchan's arrival coincided with a change in the laws of the game. In June 1925, the Modified Offside Law, the change had reduced the number of opposition players that an attacker needed to be between himself and the goal line from 3 to 2, including the goalkeeper. Buchan's idea, implemented by Chapman, was to move the centre half from a roaming position in midfield to a stopper, and this was pretty much adopted by Arsenal. So the formation that Chapman adopted was one of 2. So it was either a 2-3-5 or a 3-4-3, pretty much what we see today. So Arsenal were by no means the only other team to come up with the idea, because other teams have been watching what Chapman had been doing at Huddersfield Town and Leeds City. So it was starting now to be adopted all around. And Newcastle United were very quick to pick up on it. And unfortunately, Newcastle United, using that formation, beat Arsenal 7-0. So it wasn't a great thing for Herbert Chapman. But anyway, so other managers also were looking to adopt this. Preston North End, Manchester United, they were also looking at this new way of bringing the defence out, the home defence out, to go down the wings and interact with the midfield. So you can see there was something quite proper. So tactical attacking football was now starting to get involved in the game. And Herbert Chapman was a great believer of allowing players to have flexibility in their particular skill area. So again, something that at this point in time wasn't really being allowed by a lot of people. So a lot of other managers. So Herbert Chapman was pretty innovative in his approach to how he wanted Arsenal to play. One of his statements said that the most opportune time for the scoring is immediately after repelling an attack, whilst because opponents are then strung out in the wrong half of the field. So could you say he was the guy that invented counter-attacking football? Maybe. So Arsenal went on to finish second in the 1925-26 season, 5 points behind Chapman's old side, Huddersfield Town. As they became the first club in England to win 3 titles in succession, it proved to be an early dawn for Arsenal. Now, who spent most of the rest of the season in the mid-20s in mid-table. So Huddersfield Town have gone on and they've won 3 straight league championships. First time it's ever been done. So as Chapman took his time, basically finding the right players to fit to his new system, he had his philosophy that he wanted the right players. And because the chairman at the time was not willing to allow Chapman to go out and spend money on players that they didn't believe were right for the club, Chapman's hands were a little bit tied behind his back. But anyway, he retained relatively few players of his predecessor 9-0. Bob John, Alf Baker and Jimmy Brain. Jimmy Brain was basically an iconic player, being the exceptions. And instead, he looked to bring in talent from elsewhere. So you can see Herbert Chapman's now got a goal. So in February 1926, he signed the Paisley with Joe Hulme. Followed that summer by forward Jack Lambert and fullback Tom Parker, who would later succeed Buchan as captain. Although Arsenal's league form was indifferent, in 1927 they reached the FA Cup final, their first. But unfortunately lost 1-0 to Cardiff City after an error by the Arsenal keeper Dan Lewis. The same year, Arsenal became embroiled in a scandal. Arsenal, let's be honest, they're always embroiled in scandals. Pay at the time was limited by a maximum wage, but an FA inquiry found that Charlie Buchan had secretly received illegal payments from Arsenal as an incentive to join the club. So Henry Norris, a notorious man at Arsenal Football Club, was addicted to in his part and banned from football. But Chapman escaped punishment, but with the autocratic Norris replaced by the most benign Samuel Hill-Wood. Samuel Hill-Wood, later related to Sir Peter Hill-Wood. Chapman's power and influence within the club increased, and following his control over all aspects of the club's business. Now, have we not heard this before? Somewhere more recently, like in the last 20 years, a certain manager having control of all the business. So he persevered with rebuilding the team and strengthening his tack lineup with the signings of two iconic Arsenal players in Arsenal's history: David Jack, Cliff Baston, and Alex James. Now, Cliff Baston, as we know, went on to be Arsenal's highest goal scorer until Ian Wright beat that. These David Jack and Cliff Baston are two absolute icons of Arsenal Football Club. So Chapman worked on improving the defence, and notably through the signings of Herbie Roberts and Eddie Hapgood, another absolutely top-class player for Arsenal, at centre-half and left-back, respectively. It was the signing of David Jack, in particular, that highlighted Chapman's cunning game to transfer negotiations. This is, I can't still believe this today. Bolton Wanderers originally asked for a fee of £13,000, almost double the existing record. Bob Wall, Chapman's personal assistant at the time, later recounted the negotiations he made at Bolton Wanderers. And basically it goes as follows. So I'm quoting this. And he states, "We arrived at the hotel half an hour early. Chapman immediately went into the lounge bar. He called the waiter, placed £2 notes in his hand and said, 'George, this is Mr. Wall, my assistant. He will drink whiskey and dry ginger. I will drink gin and tonic. We shall be joined by guests. They will drink whatever they like. See that our guests are given double of everything. But Mr. Wall's whiskey and dry ginger will contain no whiskey, and my gin and tonic will contain no gin.'" So Chapman's subterfuge succeeded as he managed to bargain the inebriated Bolton directors down to £10,890 for David Jack. He was less successful in his attempt to sign Jimmy McGlory from Celtic. He has set up a meeting with Celtic manager Willie Marley with young McGlory in the summer, 28, when Marley and McGlory were on their way to a pilgrimage in Lourdes. So anyway, Chapman now is majorly established at Arsenal. He'd laid down basically a 5-year plan for success in 1925, and it came to fruition exactly on schedule, with Arsenal won their first major trophy in the 1930 FA Cup final, beat his old side Huddersfield Town 2-0. Now, that was quite the start of where Arsenal went on to and built as one of the biggest clubs in English football. So despite having finished only 14th in the league that season, the win spurred on Arsenal and laid the foundations for a decade in which Arsenal would become the most dominant team in England and eventually win 5 league titles and more FA Cups. Chapman had by now perfected Arsenal's ruthless counter-attacking strategy. He employed a robust front line of Lambert, supported by David Jack and Alex James, as deep line inside forwards, filling the gap vacated by the movement of the centre halves. And this was a clever tactic he brought in. that he allowed the centre halves to move forward, whereas previously so much in football they'd been restricted not to get basically outside of the penalty box. So Alex James, a notable player in particular, with his passing, supplying the Frenchmen, became celebrated as the engine of the team. So Alex James, the first, our version of Patrick Vieira, I dare say. So Chapman employed Baston Holm, I don't know how to say it, as pacey wingers who could cut inside. Instead of hugging the touchline, they could use either foot. So they were very, very versatile players back in time. So, and they could shoot with either foot. So, you know, back in this day and age, it was quite something. So the Arsenal way now was that all the men who are expected to play to a plan, but not so as to stifle the individuality. That was Chapman's statement. So Chapman's tactics of fast-moving play meant the wing half of John and Jones were now pushed in to cover central midfield and pivoting around the halfway line so they could drop back to defend as and when was necessary. Chapman was equally committed to a strong defence. Maybe George Graham, back in his time, looked at all of this. So Chapman wanted this strong defence and he called it the rock bottom of football. That was his statement. Defence is the rock bottom of football. Arsenal defence were told to play deep and with the opportunity of the wing halves, fall back into their own penalty area when the opposition had the ball. This allowed the opposition plenty of possession in Arsenal's half until they reached the 18-yard box, basically, and faced a mass defence. So maybe Arteta might want to go back and have a look at how he used to form up this defence, because, you know, everybody says that Arteta's fixed the defence. Well, has he really? I'm not sure. Anyway, moving on. So Chapman's system, which was now being looked at by so many top clubs in England, was that he demanded a high level of fitness from his players, which was something he strongly emphasised. And I don't know whether Chapman is the first manager in history. He even wrote down the diets for each footballer. So was he the first manager to do that? I don't know, but it's an interesting point. He balanced the need of the players, basically suited to each task, in which was skill in spotting the right players, and his extensive scouting network proved vital, really. And Herbert Chapman basically did employ 6 scouts, more than any other club in English football at the time. So through Chapman's fast counter-attacking passing approach to football contrasted with how the game was traditionally played in England at the time, with its emphasis on dribbling, possession, dwelling on the ball, and thus brought accusations of lucky Arsenal and boring Arsenal from commentators at this point in time. So we can all go back in time, can't we? Remember the boring Arsenal of George Graham. So I'm absolutely convinced that George Graham actually had a similar philosophy to Herbert Chapman and went on to actually adopt maybe even some of his tactics. I'm convinced of it. So, nevertheless, the Arsenal progressed in Arsenal's first title-winning season of 1930-31. They scored 127 goals in the league, which still stands as a club record to this day. Having won both league and cup in separate seasons with two clubs, Chapman was determined to go one better and win the double, which had not been done in the 20th century. In 1931-32, he ended up by missing out on both, having finished in second in the league behind Everton and losing the 32 FA Cup final very controversially to Newcastle United, with Newcastle's equaliser coming after the ball had gone behind for a goal kick. Don't know what happened there. Undeterred, Chapman kept faith in his side and launched a bid for the 1932-33 title. However, it was during this season that Arsenal suffered one of their most infamous defeats in their history. In the FA Cup third round, Arsenal had been drawn against Walsall of the third division North, because back then you had North and South divisions. You had Division 3 North, Division 3 South, Division 4 North, Division 3 South. It was basically the smaller clubs didn't have to travel because of financial reasons so far. So on the day, 5 of the Arsenal first team were out with the flu and had their places taken by reserves. So Arsenal were clear favourites to win this game. Arsenal lost 2-0 in one of the greatest FA Cup upsets of the time. Chapman was so enraged by the result and showed his ruthlessness by selling one player, Tommy Black, who had conceded a penalty in the game, to Plymouth Argyle. Within a week of the result, another striker, Charlie Walsh, was sold to Brentford a week later. And Brentford at this time are a non-league side. So he basically went from being a professional to a non-professional. So despite the FA Cup setback, Arsenal bounced back in the league, and with the same scoring form as the 30-31 season, finished the season having scored 118 league goals in total, including a 5-0 win over big rivals at the time, Aston Villa. In that season's title-deciding match, in the closed season, Chapman became the first professional manager in charge of England. And he didn't actually pick the side that was picked by the FA Select Committee, but he took charge for a friendly against Italy in Rome in 1933, which ended in a draw of 1-1. And England's 4-0 win over Switzerland a week later. So Herbert Chapman is now wary of his aging Arsenal team and the club's inadequate reserves, as proven by the Walsall match. And it's around this time that Chapman noted to the club director, George Allison, the team's played out, Mr. Allison. We must rebuild. So Chapman started the process, brought in some new players, and really wanted to prove and move Arsenal on. And he started this rebuilding process, and he had a sight set that Arsenal went into the 33-34 season to retain the title, and started consistently. They worked their way to the top of the league and were a comfortable 4 points clear after a goalless draw with Birmingham City in 30 December 1933. Sadly, that proved to be Chapman's last match. Chapman celebrated the new year in London before travelling north on a scouting trip to watch Bury play Notts County on the 1st of January 1934. The following day, he travelled to watch his native Yorkshire to watch Sheffield Wednesday, Arsenal's next opponents. Unfortunately, after that, he returned to London nursing a cold, but was well enough to watch an Arsenal third team play against Guildford City. Soon after, his illness suddenly worsened, pneumonia set in, and Chapman quickly succumbed. He died in the early hours of the 6th of January 1934 at his home in Hendon, and he was buried 4 days later in St Mary's Churchyard, Hendon. Now, Herbert Chapman had set a philosophy in football that was to be repeated, and his tactics adopted by many, many other teams. And after his death, Arsenal, as we know, went on to be the most dominant team in English football in the 30s and achieved unbelievable success. So it's a sad fact that he never actually got to see the end of the legacy that he'd actually started. And it was taken on after that by Joe Shaw and George Allison, who went on to achieve amazing success. But it is basically all down to Herbert Chapman. Herbert Chapman, you know, wasn't a great footballer. He, you know, his most successful part of his footballing career was at Tottenham Hotspur. So to actually achieve what he did with Northampton Town, then joining Arsenal, the way he changed football with this WM philosophy, which is still played today. If you look at any tactical formation of any club in modern football, it's still there. So he was an incredible inventor of tactical things in the game. So Arsenal, quite rightly, you know, did the right thing in 2011 when they erected the statue to him, along with, it was the 9th of December 2011. They unveiled the statue to Herbert Chapman, along with Tony Adams and Thierry Henry, two icons of the club. We can't deny that. And there's actually, I find it quite odd that Herbert Chapman is regarded as what you can go and check this out, world's 9th greatest manager of all time, and he was given that accolade in 2013. So that just shows the respect that he had by international football. I mean, you know, what he achieved as a manager. I mean, FA Cup at Huddersfield Town, 1921-22, First Division trophies, 23, 24, 24, 25, FA Cup Charity Shield, 1922, and at Arsenal, FA Cup 29-30, First Division 1930-31, 1932-1933, FA Charity Shield 1930-31 33. So in his relatively short Arsenal career, he was an unbelievable manager and absolutely deserves the respect that he got. And the fact that back in the days, the respect that Arsenal had for him, they had the bronze bust made for him, which used to be in the old Highbury East stand and now is at the Emirates. So we just jump through some comments, see what you guys got to say and thinking. So next time you're in the chat, remind me and I'll show you the letter to you. I'm not sure what that's about, mate, but Arteta soy boy, yes, absolutely, mate. Yeah. I'm a Liverpool fan, and I listen to these football stories. Nice one, mate. Welcome. So Eddie jet skiing down the Thames. Oh my God, yeah, probably is, mate. Yeah, probably is. Not doing his job. You know what I mean? Evening, Gracie. Good evening. Just got back from band. Looking forward to catching up. Nice one. Hope it went well. David Dindos, our man from New Zealand. Robert, he may have worked his way up to Scunthorpe by now. Yeah, probably. Robert Smith, AFC 71, but only if Arteta goes with him. Yeah, I wish he would. Well, in fact, I'd drive him up there, mate, to be fair. You know, don't mind doing that. We've got Aaron. Del Boy. Nice to see you, Del Boy. I say it took them hours and hours of driving to scout players. Yeah, must have done. Anyway, before I leave it, please go and subscribe to some great people that have helped me out. Gracie May, lovely young lady, great channel, great content. CMO Connor, his channel, he needs some big support, people. He's a nice, lovely young guy. Does some amazing stuff. Del Boy, Gunner TV. I'll be back on there with Warren's Team Talk, another great channel. We'll be back there, I think, finishing off the 79-80 football season and the FA Cup, League Cup, and the Cup Winners' Cup run. So, hope you enjoy this one. I wanted to really talk about Herbert Chapman as the man he was, not so much the greatness he succeeded, because I will be covering Herbert Chapman's legacy at Arsenal at some point as we move forward. I'll probably drop in another history one over the weekend, maybe. But Herbert Chapman's such an iconic manager for Arsenal. He's probably Arsenal first, without a doubt, biggest manager. He brought in a whole new way of how football should be played, which was adopted. Basically, let's get it right. It was adopted all around the world, you know. So he needs ultimate respect for that. And the fact that so many other teams around the world have given him that accolade of being the 9th greatest manager of all time in 2013. That is really saying something. So I'm so glad that he got the respect he deserved with his statue outside the Emirates. Personally, sadly to me, I wish it had been outside Highbury, but there you go. But I hope you enjoyed it, people. And I say I'll be on with Del Boy and Warren on Friday. We'll finish off the 79-80 season. And take care all, and I will see you all very soon. Cheers.